So this can be, let's do 32. This one can be 14 centimeters, and this is going to be x. So same thing, sine of my angle is the opposite over the hypotenuse. Remember, this is going to be my opposite side. I didn't draw it over here, did I? Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing, move the bottom of my fraction first, bring it over here. So x sine 32 equals 14. And then same thing, these two are multiplying and I want to get x by itself. So I'm going to do the opposite of that and bring it across as a division. And then I'm just going to type that into my calculator. So if you don't have a fraction option on your calculator, that's okay. Remember, fractions mean division, so you can just type it in as a division. And I get 26.42. Great. Okay, now that you've learned how to use sine, you will know how to do all of the others. They're exactly the same. So cos is exactly the same as sine. You just have to use the adjacent instead of using the opposite. So if I have my triangle here, and I call this one 41 degrees, and this time I have this as my x, and this can be 20 centimeters. All right, so this time that's my opposite, and I don't have it, right? This is my adjacent, and this is my hypotenuse. So just like this was my hypotenuse and this was my opposite, this is my hypotenuse and adjacent. And so if you go back to your rule, if I have my adjacent and my hypotenuse, that means the rule is cos. Because all of the other ones had the opposite in the hypotenuse, it must always be sine. So this time I'm going to say cos. So in the book, a lot of the questions to begin with, they're going to tell you which ratio to use. But then eventually you'll need to figure it out yourself based on what's available, and I'll do examples of that stuff later. So cos of the angle, which is 41, is the adjacent this time, which is x, over the hypotenuse, which is 20. So again, I always bring the bottom of my fraction across first. And I don't have to do anything else because x is already by itself. So I'm just going to type that in. So I'm going to type in 20 times, this time I'm using cos 41. And that gives me 15.09 centimeters. All right, let's do one of those where we don't know the hypotenuse this time. Okay, so this is going to be my x. Let's call this one 36. And this can be, let's make it 35 centimeters. Okay. So this time, again, this one's going to be my hypotenuse as usual, and this one here is my adjacent because it's next to the angle. This is my opposite and I'm not using it. So cosine of the angle is the opposite over, the adjacent, my bad, over the hypotenuse. And I'm going to do the same thing I always do, bring the bottom of my fraction across first. Oh, yeah. Don't worry about me, I'm going crazy. Okay, and then I want to get x by itself. So what I'm going to do is these are multiplying each other, so I'm going to divide it. So x is 35 over cos 36. And then I'm just going to type that into my calculator. I'm going to say 35 cos 36. And that gives me 43.26. Which is good because that is longer than this, and I want it to be because that's the hypotenuse side. All right, and 10 works exactly the same way. Whoops. So this time, I'm not going to be using my hypotenuse at all. This is clearly not to scale, but let's call this 18 degrees. That should be a much smaller angle if that was true. Okay, so I'm going to call this one x, and this one can be 40 meters. All right, let's say we're doing some playground planning or something. So tan this time needs the opposite and the adjacent, and it's just this one divided by this one as usual. So this time I say tan of the angle, 18, equals the opposite, right, which is over here, that's my x, over the adjacent, which is 40. I always move the bottom of my fraction first. 40 times tan 18 is x. And then I type it into my calculator. 40 times tan 18 is 13. That rounds up to 13. So that would be 13 meters long. And same thing if, just like before, let's say that we don't know the adjacent. Let's call this 60. I'm going to call this one can be 12 centimeters, and this time that's my x. So this time I have again the opposite and the adjacent, no hypotenuse. So tan of my angle is my opposite, which is 12, over my adjacent, which is x. I always bring the bottom of my fraction first. Okay, now I need to get x by itself, so I'm going to divide by this. And then I just type that into my calculator. So 12 divide 10, 60. It's 6.93. Always include units of measurement when you're given them. That's obviously part of the question. Okay, so that's how you use sine, cos, and tan. It's just lots and lots of repetition. Once you get the hang of this, it'll be really easy because it's very repetitive. So if you're still unsure of what to do, go back and watch this again or get in touch with me. And yeah, good luck.